Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scath. He's Mike Werman. Today we're going to continue talking about the woeful Royals season, although they did manage to split a 4-game series with the best team in baseball, Tampa Rays.
Maybe we should talk about how bad the Rays are.
Oh, and our worry for their well-being, mental
Mhm.
well-being. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll also spend a little time talking about the upcoming MLB draft, as well as the just occurred NBA draft, and a little bit more on the NFL at the tail end of today's episode. But we'll start with the Kansas City Royals. I don't know if we should have been excited about the split of the with the Rays, or they were bookended by losses with the Tigers, and tonight the series opener with the Indians. Did you find the 2 wins with Tampa encouraging,
I-
or discouraging for the Rays? Did you feel bad for them? What are your thoughts on the recent Royals success or lack of success?
Yeah, it's a little hard to say. Well, we just remind our many viewers that we film on the Tuesday, and so we instead of we air on Thursday, Tuesday, very late Tuesday night. Usually we film sometimes the early hours of Wednesday morning, and then we end up airing on Thursday. But so the Royals were, I believe, 2-4 in the over the last week for since our um, last production of Warning Track Power, which is actually which is a 333 winning percentage, which is really bad if you have that for the whole season, but it's actually better than what the Royals have been so far. They're like at 280 or something right now,
So
winning percentage.
success.
Yeah, so this has actually been a
Promising.
successful week. Um, they are now comfortably again only the second worst team in baseball because the A's, which had rattled off I think 7 straight wins at one point, have lost 9 out of their last 10 now, and so
They did win tonight. They beat the
ooh,
Yankees in
okay, they
game
beat the Yankees.
one.
Okay, so they ended up winning. Okay, so maybe
But
they're,
still,
they're
the Royals still have a 2-game lead then over Oakland, I believe, as of right now.
okay. So that's a little bit, I don't know. We'll talk about the draft, so maybe we don't want them to have the uh although as we mentioned last week, if you finish anywhere in the bottom three of the league, you have the same chance at getting the number one overall draft pick.
Right.
So you don't have to finish worse anymore to get the number one.
Right. And
Which
and even, knowing the results that we've seen, at least from the past drafts, having the number one pick isn't really telling for being even a solid major league player.
Yeah, well, we can go
So
through those. Maybe next week we'll go through some of that because we'll talk about that a little bit in the NBA context
yeah.
later, which seems like it's more of a certainty you're going to get the best player in the NBA, but even that hasn't been very certain in the last 20 plus years.
Right.
But for the Royals, I guess they're doing a little bit better. They had at one point they won the first two. They won 2 out of 3 against the Rays, so they could have possibly if they had taken 3 out of 4. But the Rays managed to salvage a series um, draw with the Royals, and again the Rays still have the best record in baseball, but the Atlanta Braves are catching up in the National League. It was kind of the National League was very bunched together,
Mhm.
even the worst teams. I think the Cardinals might still be the worst team in the majors. I mean in the National League, but um, but they're still I think about 10 games above where the Royals are. Let's say, the Cardinals are no longer the worst team in the National League. Uh,
Rockies have dropped into the
the
bottom.
Rockies have dropped. Oh yeah, the Rockies and the
Interesting.
Nationals are kind of in a dead heat
Yeah.
right now for the worst, and they've each won over the 30 or more games. So the Royals are about 8 games behind that pace. The Cardinals are 33 and 45. They're only 8 games out of first in the Central.
Right.
Um, the Reds with Ellie De La Cruz in in the lineup now have surged into first place in the Central. My Pittsburgh Pirates have dropped down to fourth. They kind of crashed to earth. I had bet on the Pirates to win more than I believe 67 or something like that games if you have those. records, but now they're 36 and 42. They're falling backwards, but
It's somewhere. Oh, here it is. You had the Pirates 67.5 is the over under.
67, so more than 67. Okay. 68 wins or more. And I guess they're still on the pace to do that, I believe. And my Red Sox picks looking good. My Tigers under isn't looking quite as good, although the Tigers still could finish under. They're 34 and 44. But the Royals over that we both picked 68 and a half over, I
Right.
believe, is not looking good at all. And the Royals, despite winning 2 out of 4 against the Rays, have not continued their success or semi-success afterward. They've now lost 2 in a row again. So they were, I think, 22 and 54. Now they're 22 and 56, or were they 22 and 57 now? 22 and 57. So they're up to 22 and 55. Uh, and so they had won exactly 2 out of 7 games. That's their pace, 2 and 5. Uh, uh, but now they're a little bit worse than that even. So,
Mm.
um, so this week I guess is a success because they won 2 games. They only lost 4, and it's they have a 278 winning percentage. So this week bumped them up, you know, and so I guess that's I don't know. I'm just looking for any silver lining at
Yeah.
all.
They probably should have won tonight's game. They had a 1-0 lead in the ninth inning, but again, they're doing a thing that I still don't quite understand. Maybe you have some insight on. Why is Chapman not the closer, but um
Barlow
well, yeah, Scott Barlow is the
is. I
closer. Yeah.
I guess maybe this is one of those things. Maybe
Why?
since I think so often higher leverage situations come in the 8th inning than the ninth inning, and
Mhm.
maybe sabermetrically the 8th inning is more important than the ninth. Because there's I don't know. It reminds me a little bit of when the Royals were at their best, was when Wade well one of the times when the Royals were was when Wade Davis was the 8th inning guy and Greg Holland was the ninth. Holland was really good, but Wade Davis was even better as part of the HDH.
Right.
Herrera, Davis, Holland. Davis was the best. He had like an under 1 ERA, I think, in 2014, and 2015 was also very, very good. I think he was the closer mostly 2015 because Holland got hurt, but I think he would have stayed in the 8th inning role even if Holland had been healthy. So I guess sometimes maybe having your 8th inning guy be lights out is better. So maybe that's why they want Chapman. But as you mentioned before we went on, like if Chapman is supposed to be a trade piece, you want to showcase him in the ninth inning. You want to at least see him get those racked up save numbers and things like that. So I don't know why. Maybe it's because the Rays sabermetric philosophy will put him in eighth, but like it doesn't make sense for a lot of the other lineup decisions. You mentioned you might want to talk about a lineup. Was it a week ago or against the Tigers where their cleanup hitter was pinch hit for pretty early
Yeah,
in the
I mean,
game?
it was in the top of the eighth inning, I
Or top of
guess.
the eighth.
But they
Okay.
still had to play the bottom of the eighth, and then the top,
Mhm.
and then then the ninth inning. In theory, they would have a
You
chance to get back in it. They were down 5-2 going into the eighth. So yeah, they ended up pinch hitting for some reason. Matt Duffy was in the game at all, but then also hitting cleanup as the second baseman, which is kind of strange anyway. Duffy hasn't really shown much power from the team, and like basically
Mhm.
everyone else on the team, I think, has shown more power during the season. But yeah, being in the cleanup spot from before the game started is very strange. I think at the best, I think is what you could say. But it instigated a bunch of changes that happened then when they pinch hit for Duffy. Uh, just to run through it because it was very strange anyway. Yeah, so Beatty, who pinch hit for Duffy, ends up going into right field,
Yeah.
which then causes Olivares, who was playing right, to move to left field. And then left fielder Samad Taylor ends up moving to second base to fill Duffy's shoes. And then what would happen afterwards was very odd. Was a fly ball right between two of the players that just moved positions, Samad Taylor and Matt Beatty, and a collision happened. Uh, Beatty ends up with a concussion and has to leave the game, which brings Drew Waters in. But they don't send Drew Waters to right; they send him to center field, and then move the regular center fielder in the game, at least how the game started with, was Tyron Blanco. Move him to right field. So basically, 2/3 of the team like shifted, within that one inning, all because of bizarre scenario of having Duffy start the game anyway and in the cleanup spot. So none of that really mattered. I mean, like it was just, it's all like on paper, a mistake that was made before the game even started. And
Yeah.
none of
Do
those
you
things should have happened. So essentially, like Royals management caused this concussion for Matt Beatty.
Was there an
Realistically, Matt
injury?
Beatty should have been in the game to start with because he had like driven in the winning run in the previous game, but was
Mhm.
not in the starting lineup the next day. That also drives me crazy because
You
that
talk
seems like
about that.
an
They
obvious thing.
seem to reshuffle things after a win
Yeah,
rather than keep things like you would think, oh, we'll keep things the same after the win.
as much as
Um,
you can. Yeah.
but do you think that the Matt Duffy in the cleanup spot was because maybe there was an injury or something that happened right before the game when we just didn't want to mess the lineup anymore? So we'll just stick Duffy at
It
4?
seems like typically what they've been doing is if Nicky Lopez isn't in the lineup, that Samad Taylor plays second. But I think they're just trying to get Duffy into games. So I guess whenever somebody's up for a day off, Duffy goes to that spot. But then they also want to get players time, and I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was
Duffy
just
is.
recently even
Yeah.
where like they made the decision they didn't want Melendez, who's been playing in right field pretty regularly, to not have to worry about catching
Mhm.
duties. And because he was trading off with Sal behind the
Mhm.
plate, and they decided they wanted him to just focus on hitting, play right field, don't think about being the catcher. But then today they had him move from right to left, which is still a change. So I don't know why they would bother with that. If the philosophy is don't change your fielding duties, and then they have him like flip it.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
may as well just have him be a catcher sometimes too. So I don't. I mean, the philosophy doesn't make any sense from any level. There's no statistical relevance to it. I don't know what their thought process is to get to this. And half of these games that they're dropping, I think you could probably assume they were going to lose based on the lineup card they turned in, regardless of whatever happens in the game. And that game a week ago looks like that just on paper. It's like that's a loss. Matt Duffy's cleanup. Why? I don't understand. He's in
Yeah.
the
This is
game.
good.
It's fine, but like getting cleanup, I
Mhm.
doesn't make sense on any level.
Yeah. This has been Dr. Andrew Scaff's weekly Royals rant, I believe. And well, there's Duffy. You could say, well, Duffy is hitting 303 this year, 357 on base percentage. So maybe you think, oh, that's a pretty good. We'll put him in higher up in the order.
Well, then hit him lead off, move everybody down one slot.
Yeah.
See, to me that makes more sense than having him hit cleanup. Like even if you go with traditional baseball logic, you'd still want your best power hitter there. And that's Sal though, and they haven't done that like at all this year. Like he's not been hitting in the 4 slot,
No.
and he's been
Uh,
struggling. He gets hit with foul balls all the time. He got hit with a pitch a few days ago. He's not been that great at the plate the last few days. We got a day off today, entire day off, which is a rarity. Not catching, not DH.
yeah. I get Freddie Fermin batting ninth and catching. He's been decent
He's
this
all
year.
right.
Kyle Isbell came back into the lineup. They put him kind of right in the middle, but I guess there's no real great Royals hitter this year, so it's hard to say. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, Prado is leading. He was leading off this, and then Witt in second, Melendez third. Taylor pinch hit from Melendez, or pinch ran for Melendez, and then Garcia, I guess, is probably having the best year of anybody. Michael Garcia as a rookie.
Yeah,
player. I read something about Michael Garcia perhaps being in contention for the Rookie of the Year
I
award. Do you
saw that
think?
headline. I didn't look at the article though.
I don't know if that's possible. I don't know who the best rookies are in the American League right now, but uh, projected right now, guys. Well, I guess the projections are just double what they are essentially. So it only has 94 games for Garcia played. So, but so like presumably he'll play on the rest on out. So maybe he'll have 10, 15 home runs, something like that. Playing solid defense at third base mostly. He's been at third mostly, hasn't he, Garcia?
Sometimes outfield they move guys around for seemingly no reason. So I don't really know what Nothing they do really makes sense.
Yeah,
Like Nicky Lopez plays third sometimes, plays
yeah.
second sometimes. So it's like basically the whole team is you. I mean, they're turning them all into like utility players. So if they're trying to build some kind of like roster out of utility players or try to show that a player is versatile, that they could be a trade piece. Nobody wants utility players. Don't do this. I don't get it at all. It doesn't help the Royals. It doesn't help the players by building a bunch of utility players. That a guy's a good player, regular position.
Maybe they're trying to bring in, so they're all playing different positions. Maybe they're trying to play the soccer style of the 1970s Dutch teams, which was known as total football, where there were no positions that players had, where they started with a position, but then they could switch as the game went on. So like instead of like like a back making the run up to forward, and then eventually coming back while in the midfielder who replaced them would go back to their spot. They would just continue playing in that position, and maybe that's what the Royals brass have decided to do. We'll have every player be able to play every position
But
and
they
even switch positions during the game.
but shouldn't they
So
just like play in like shouldn't they just like come together as a team like in the middle of the field and then just like spray out to the positions like
yeah,
between innings or like for every batter maybe
hey,
even?
I wonder why players don't do that. Like why like you could say like well maybe the outfield spots like why don't they switch an inning? Like why doesn't the guy in center field play left field for an inning and then go back to center? Do
Yeah.
they have to announce that sort of thing beforehand or like because you can shift whenever or used to be able to shift over.
Yeah.
So I would guess you could play and they have those sometimes those stunts where the catcher or somebody would play every position uh one
Yeah.
one inning.
Well, it's like a
So
guy that does that though, right? Not
yeah,
yeah.
but I guess the other players have to move around a little bit to accommodate
Right.
that.
Um
And
I was gonna ask them too, did you watch the most recent season of Ted Lasso?
I haven't seen
The
it.
Total Football actually plays a
Oh, okay.
role in that show. So
The 1970s Johan Cruyff Dutch team that I think they finished runner up in the World Cup in 1974 and 1978. They did not win either one. The Dutch still have not. I think they're the closest team that has come the closest to winning the World Cup. I think they were runner up against Spain maybe too in 2010, and so like, they've come really close, but they haven't won. But yeah, so I guess maybe that's what the Royals are trying to do. I don't
they
know.
watched Ted Lasso and are like, I've heard of this now, and
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know what Matt Quattro's um, sporting history is. Maybe he's watching Sporting KC play, although they haven't been as that great recently. So
No,
yeah, I don't know what's going on with the Royals. One thing that's true is that the draft is coming up, and I believe in 2 weeks,
it's the ninth,
the
so
ninth. So we'll have a kind of a draft
like a
special episode
weekend, I guess. Yeah,
next week,
yeah,
and we'll talk a little more about it. But you have a little bit of draft info that you wanted to talk
yeah.
about.
Not a whole lot anyway, but mostly I think it was just going to be like mention about like what. the uh the structure of the draft is anyway. Maybe is what we should maybe say a little bit about this time, and
Okay.
then maybe we'll talk about some of the picks. So the Royals were the fifth worst team by record last season, but because of the lottery, they actually fell a few spots in the first round. So they'll be drafting eighth in round one and then fifth in
Hmm.
all the 19 subsequent rounds.
Oh, so the only round one is lottery. The other rounds are straight record. Okay.
Right. Then it goes back to record. Yeah. So and then this year I think is the first year of this prospect promotion incentive rounds. Before they kind of like kept players, they'd hold like rookies back to try to get an extra year of control from their contracts, by
Uh,
not starting them when the season starts, but starting them like bringing rookies up like in July or August would be like pretty common, at least anyway.
mhm, mhm.
To create the like that super two scenario. So they're trying to get rid of that now. So now they're saying that like if you have a guy that is on the as a rookie on the opening day roster, and I think if they play the whole season, and then maybe some I don't remember if they have to like be considered for an award, but you can actually get an additional draft pick as a bonus
Ah, so it's a
for like
little
a
bit like
potential loss of a
five,
year of
kind of
control. You
situation.
may get another prospect to sort of fill that void at least anyway. One team qualified for a prospect promotion incentive. That was the Seattle Mariners
Ooh.
this season.
Who was it? Who was the
I'm
player?
not
Do you
sure
know?
who it's for though. Oh, for Julio Rodriguez, won the Rookie of the
Julio
Year award.
Rodriguez.
Well, maybe you can only do that. Maybe it's only two teams can actually win that now. I'm not sure, but I believe that's the first incentive pick. Then, so they get
This
a
is
the 29th pick of the draft would be a bonus Seattle pick. Um, and then so the Royals will pick eighth and then 44th. And they also get a bonus pick in the competitive balance round B at 66.
okay.
They get three picks in the top in the first two rounds anyway. And then this season, I think they were doing 20 total rounds, which is a much shorter than what it had been.
It used to be 50. Well, 50 was the standard until just recently, I guess, when it went to 20. It had been like 80 or something. I don't remember. Mike Piazza famously, wasn't he a 70 or 63rd round pick or 70th?
Something like that. And it was only as like a personal favor to Tommy Lasorda, right? Wasn't it like Lasorda's buddy was Piazza's dad or something like that?
Yeah, I guess yeah, he was, um, yeah, he was, yeah, it says after his father asked Lasorda to select Piazza as a favor, um, he's 62nd round,
Second round pick.
62nd round, the 1988 draft. So it was the last draft. They had 62. So he was the fifth, the 1390th player out of 1395 players taken. So they took all 1400 players almost back then, and now they're down to 500 or 600 players.
Yeah,
I guess about 600 plus
about
players.
600 plus 50, 40 maybe 30 total, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would be 600 if it was 20 times 30, and then maybe a few extra
Yeah,
uh,
competitive round
compensation
is
picks.
six players. Well, there's 70 picks in the first. There's a compensatory round too. There's 70 players, and so there's 10 extra players, so 610 should be. There you go.
Yeah.
A few teams like lost a pick, I think, too, for like having to give it up for something.
Yeah, I was just looking up the Piazza family more. So yeah, Mike Piazza's godfather apparently was Tommy Lasorda. I don't know exactly how they're from Norristown, Pennsylvania, lived in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Tommy Lasorda is also from Norristown,
Hmm.
Pennsylvania. Norristown is a Philadelphia um, kind of old suburb of Philadelphia. So they're Philip. Philly folks. So I guess that's why they knew Tommy Lasorda. Tommy Lasorda also played briefly with the Kansas City A before. Yeah, I don't know what else.
Like
In
Royals,
any other?
like manager, like they've had actually historically have had like produced quite a few managers, right?
Yeah, those Kansas City A's teams, I think, had a lot of managers on that
Future
roster.
managers, I guess, right?
Future
Yeah,
managers, yeah, future managers on that roster. I don't.
because they drafted Lou Piniella, the Royals
Mhm,
did, not the A's, but
yeah,
the Royals did.
a lot of those Royals players became managers of the Royals too, like in the 60s and 70s, because you had both Hal McRae and
The '80s, yeah.
John Watson.
Jamie Quirk was a manager, wasn't he too?
Work was a long time manager. Bud Black, 70s and 80s. Because Bob Boone, who was on the team later in his mostly probably known for his Angels career, but he was on the Royals towards the end.
Hmm.
Was a long time manager, also manager of the Royals. Um, yeah, the Royals have had a lot of players. I guess that's probably true for most teams. They've had because it seems like in general, a lot of the managers are former players that do fairly well. I think like other sports, like I think the least likely for a former player to be a head coach or a manager is probably the NFL. Those seem like it's very very rare for a former NFL player to be a head coach.
Hmm.
Um, let's who's I don't know who comes to mind right now. Jim Harbaugh was for the 49ers, and I guess Bill Romanowski has been a head coach at one point. Mike Singletary. None of them were very successful.
Yeah, yeah,
Most of the most of these guys are career coaches from like maybe they play or maybe they do play a little bit in the NFL, but then they become um, maybe Tony Dungy was a brief NFL player too or something. But like yeah, it's like they are not successful NFL players usually. They become coaches.
right. Well, a lot of the MLB managers are had some kind of playing career, but not necessarily were
Yeah.
the best player anyway,
Well, you
right?
had well like Dusty Baker was a decent
I mean, he's
player.
a good player, yeah.
Don Mattingly, famous, as was a really good player.
Maybe not
Um,
the best manager though, right? So
no,
yeah,
yeah,
he may
this
be the
same this
most famous player to have become a manager.
yeah Frank Robinson was
Oh
a
yeah,
good manager.
that's really good.
Hall of
Yeah,
Fame, but Ted Williams was thought not to be a good manager. He was but yeah, it seems like a lot of you had a lot of really good players that became um, managers. I
would
don't
it be
I guess
something they look for when they're looking at the draft? Should they be saying like, "Oh, this guy might be a future manager"?
well, it seems like catchers become managers more often than any other position. So Ned Yost was a catcher. He may have played very briefly as a in the majors, uh, but I'm looking at the current managers right now. Alex Cora, I remember as a player.
Yeah, he's like an infielder.
Terry Francona for the Guardians played. AJ Hinch, former Royals catcher, I mean,
Yep.
was a Tigers manager. Dusty Baker. I don't think Matt Quatraro ever played.
Oh, I don't know.
Phil, uh, let's see if I don't think he ever played in the majors. No. Um, but then there's Phil Nevin. He was a decent player. He was thought to be like a big star at one point. I think I had a rookie card or something of him. He was thought to be like an up and comer in the like late '80s, early '90s. Rocco Baldelli was a good player until he got hurt. For the Twins manager, Aaron Boone, player. Mark Kotze, player. Scott Service, you remember? Um,
Poitras never made it to the majors. He made it to
yeah,
AAA. Is how far he got at least anyway.
Quintero, yeah.
Yeah.
Service, I remember playing for the majors. He was a relief pitcher. Kevin Cash also played. Bruce Bochy was a player. Um, I don't remember John Schneider. Yeah, John Schneider for the Blue Jays was not. Like a majority of the players of the
They,
managers in the American League were players at the major league level.
yeah, at the major league. I think they were all baseball players,
Mhm.
whether they made it to the majors or not, right?
Yeah,
Who was
yeah.
the last John? Who was the last guy?
John Schneider. for the Blue Jays was not a
John Schneider. Let's see.
make.
He did play in the minors.
Yeah,
He's younger than us, Mike. Did you know that?
yeah. Well, yeah, it's starting to happen. But in
Yeah.
the National League,
He made it to AAA with Toronto. So he's been in their organization for quite some time.
yeah, um,
Yeah, he's been with the Blue Jays since the 2002 season.
National League seems to have fewer
So yeah,
former
Schneider's
major league
20
players.
plus year Blue Jay. Can you believe that?
Wow. So the Reds manager David Bell was a decent player. Buddy, I think he's isn't he Buddy Bell's son, former Royals manager and former Indians player. Bud Black, Dave Roberts, probably most famous for his stolen base against the Yankees in the 2003 ALCS that kind of um, propelled the Red Sox to the World Series. Skip Shoemaker, former
Cardinal.
Cardinal. Craig Counsell, longtime Astro, Diamondback, maybe just Diamondback.
I
So
remember
he won
mostly
with
with
the
the Diamondbacks, but yeah.
He won with the Marlins. He won the World Series. Buck Showalter, did he play? He was a longtime manager. He's back in the majors. I
Yeah.
don't know if he ever played in the majors, Buck Showalter. He's one of the exceptions, maybe that proves the rule. Um, Rob Thompson doesn't seem like he played for anybody. He is the Phillies manager right now. Derek Shelton, I don't remember. He played 2 seasons in the Yankees organization. So um, Oliver Marmol, I do not remember playing. Yeah, the National League, Bob Melvin has been a longtime manager. I think he also played catcher in the majors for a
Earl
while.
Walter made it as high as AAA with the Yankees.
Gabe Kapler and Dave Martinez, the Giants and National managers, they were all um, players too. But those two are both players. But
Martinez
yeah,
was an expo, was it not?
yes,
I think Marmol, I think was a player though, wasn't he?
by Mike, I don't remember him.
Oh, that's all. Carlos Marmol was in the major.
Oh yeah, maybe related.
Oliver Marmol though
Yeah, I
was
don't. He's a Cardinals
made it
manager.
as high A
Okay,
2010 as recently as 2010.
so by my count, 8 out of the 15 National League player managers were players, but um, one, two, three, 11 out of the 15 American League managers were major league players. So that's 19 out of 30. So almost 2/3 are former players. That's right now. So I compare that to NFL coaches. Uh, John
Harbaugh.
Harbaugh is the brother of Jim Harbaugh, but I
Yeah.
don't. He never played himself.
They
Frank Reich,
played
I
in
guess,
the
did.
NFL. They probably played like college football though, right?
Yeah, Frank Reich probably was backup quarterback to Jim
Yes.
Kelly, uh, and he was also the quarterback in the uh, big comeback that the Bills had against the Oilers when they were down 30, I believe 35-3 at halftime or something like that, and they won. So yeah, Frank Reich, um, Zach Taylor was also, I believe, a NFL. No, he was the Nebraska quarterback. He never ended up playing in the NFL, but maybe he did. Um, uh, Dan Campbell for the uh, for the Lions, played a bit as a tight end. He was in the league for a while. Not
Mhm.
a great player. Matt LaFleur was a backup quarterback. He actually ended up signing a huge deal in Seattle because he had like one good game with the Green Bay Packers when he was, I think, Brett Favre's backup. He threw like 6 touchdowns in a game or something like that, and then he got this huge contract with Seattle and didn't do anything. Um, no, or am I thinking of somebody else? No,
No, I don't think he doesn't have any NFL
who am I thinking of then?
record. Yeah.
Matt Flynn. I'm thinking of Matt Flynn. I'm sorry, not Matt.
Yes, different guy.
Matt Flynn was the football, the guy who played for the Um, yeah, I was thinking he played for LSU, and I was thinking LaFleur, French, LSU, and I had conflated them. He played for the Packers, and then he signed this huge contract, a big contract, and he lost the starting job to Russell Wilson. That was Matt Flynn. I'm sorry, Mr. LaFleur. So he
That
was
makes
not in the player, but D'Amico Ryans was a solid linebacker for several years for the Texans and the Eagles. So I guess there are more that I had thought of. Doug Peterson was a coach. Was a player,
yeah.
backup quarterback, mostly. Dennis Allen made the practice squad of a team, but Mike Vrabel, Todd Bowles were both players. So I guess there were maybe 5 or 6.
Andy Reid
Um,
was in the punt, pass, and kick.
Ron Rivera played for the Bears. He was part of the yeah, Andy Reid was the giant among the punt, pass, and kick competition. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so maybe 6 or 7. So probably it seems like it's about almost 3 times as likely right now, anyway, for a major league manager to have been a major league player than an NFL coach to have been a.
Hmm. But it's rare to be a successful player to then become a coach. But I think that's pretty true in most of the leagues, right? Like a really like
Well,
like maybe Deion Sanders, maybe if he decides to try to go to the pros from Colorado,
yeah,
he'd
if he
be like
doesn't,
one of the most famous players to become a coach, to become an
yeah,
NFL, right?
yeah,
If he decides to do that.
Sanders had some medical issues recently. Did you hear about that?
That, yes.
With his he had to have it well he had toes amputated, and he almost needed to have his foot amputated, but they didn't try to surgery because I guess he has very low blood flow to one of his feet because of some injury that he suffered,
Wow.
probably playing football, and some reconstructive surgery or something with his ankle.
Wow.
And so yeah, I think in college Sanders is a good coach. I do not necessarily think he would be a good coach in the NFL because college is usually motivators and recruiters that are good
Yeah,
coaches.
sure.
And it's X and O's guys that become the good coaches in the NFL because there are no like the talent level of all the teams is pretty even. So it's going to be the coaching and the player assembly that becomes more important than just like Nick Saban recruiting the best players and you know what they say about you know college basketball coaches or basketball coaches with the best players. They just roll the balls out for practice and let people play around, and then that's all they do. In the NFL, it seems like coaching is more. And baseball has traditionally been seen as a very kind of managerially heavy, like managing people and putting them in these positions. I don't know how true necessarily that is, but um, yeah, but it's yeah. So I don't, so we don't. So the draft, we don't know what's going to happen with that. Yeah, we can also
I,
talk
I,
about.
I guess the early report though is that the Royals may be interested in high school players again. Now this will be JJ Piccolo's first official draft, I think, as the guy anyway, as the GM. And it sounds like they may be linked to a couple of different high school players. The draft strategy may be shifting again, but we don't know. We'll hopefully know a little bit more next week when we do our little last minute MLB draft preview.
Yeah. So Frank Mazzucato in the 2021 draft was from um, a high school, and
Mm-hmm.
who the 2022 first round draft pick.
Ava Lacey, right?
So we had Gavin. 2022 was Gavin Cross from Virginia Tech. Frank Mazzucato from East Catholic High School, Manchester, Connecticut was a high school. Asa Lacey was from A&M, Texas A&M. Bobby Witt Jr. was a high school player.
Yeah.
So two out of the last four drafts, the Royals have drafted high school players. Prior to that, they had three first round draft picks famously in 2018. They took three pitchers: Brady Singer, Jackson Kowar, um, and Daniel Lynch, all from colleges. Nick Prado was from high school, 2017, Huntington Beach High School. No first round pick in 2016. I don't know what happened in 2016 at the Royals. Was that because they won the World Series? They didn't get a draft pick in the first round?
They didn't have a draft pick at all. No, they didn't.
No, there were only 23 draft picks in the first round. Oh, maybe because they signed free agents or something, they didn't get
I
one.
bet that's what it was. Yeah,
Um, no
they probably
compensatory picks
did the pick.
either. No competitive balance picks. The Royals in the 20, yeah, no pick. Um, no first round pick. Nolan Watson, Lawrence North High School, 2015. Ash Russell, 2015, also first round pick. Neither of them panned out. Chase Vallot didn't pan out as a catcher. Neither did Foster Griffin as a pitcher. High school.
Velo was the Chase Velo.
Oh, Velo, was that his name? I guess he was from Louisiana. Something like that. I don't even remember him. I remember seeing his name in print, but
He was
he
supposed to
was
be pretty
supposed.
good, and he never panned out though. Yeah.
Yeah, he was supposed to be like a good on base percentage
What year
guy.
was that? Was that one?
2014. So they had three first round picks in 2014. They had Finnegan, Foster Griffin, and Chase Velo.
Yeah.
Uh, Finnegan from college went to the majors very, very quickly. They also had the year before Hunter Dozier and Sean Manaea, both college. Kyle Zimmer, college. 2011, Bubba Starling, famously from uh, Gardner Edgerton High School here on the Kansas side of the metro, kind of sort of ex-urban Kansas City.
Yep.
Um, he ended up finally making his major league debut in 2019, and he played for the Royals in 2019 and 2020, but has retired. And so the most famous high school pick I would hazard to guess, at least in the 21st century, was Zach Greinke in 2002. Although maybe you could say Colt Griffin, the bust in 2001. He was I think, the first high school pitcher to be able to throw 100 miles an hour or something
Yeah.
like that. Um, he was very wild. He never made it. But Zach Greinke, I don't know if we've talked about this on the air or we just talked about it before, but Zach Greinke was famously in the Royals draft strategy was famously maligned in Michael Lewis's book Moneyball, and they're talking about how great the Oakland A's draft was in 2002 because they were picking these college players that were already developed. They
Mm-hmm.
had plate discipline, things like that. But Zach Greinke turns out to be by far the best of any of the players drafted in 2002. So that's like probably the Royals' most successful pick uh, in the first round. Alex Gordon was solid. Mustakas Hosmer were very good. Hochevar was decent, although not an over number one
There was just
award.
recently an article on ESPN about the best draft from each major league team. Which year do you think was the Royals' best draft? This goes back to the beginning of the franchise, though.
Back to the beginning of the franchise. So maybe the year George Brett was drafted,
Yeah. You didn't have to
71.
take very long to get to that, and you are correct.
I think they drafted.
So in that actual draft, I think he was the only like major player that they got. But
Yeah,
there, the supplemental draft, they also got they got a couple of guys. They got a catcher later, like in the January draft, and then they got Steve Busby in the that supplemental second part of the draft, because the draft was really split into like 4 or 5 parts over the year,
Oh,
and they ended up with Brett Busby and maybe John Waffen too. I think maybe that's who it
hmm.
was in
The
that same
best
list anyway.
the best players. So of that 71 Major League Baseball draft, the round draft pick that year was number 5 overall. That was Roy Branch. Um,
Really?
and he was from St. Louis. He had one, so he didn't make, so he was drafted 71. He didn't make the major 79. He was drafted, um, he was purchased by the Royals so for cash considerations, I guess is what they call it now. Um, he only had 1 or 2 appearances. He had almost 8 he was a September call of 1979, so he did not pan out.
Yeah,
Um,
Brett was actually the second pick that year.
Brett was number 29 overall. Mike Schmidt was number 30 overall. So, and Brett and
Yes.
Schmidt were both shortstops. Uh, because everybody played, your best player played shortstop. Neither of them played shortstop in the majors, really.
Right.
So would you have, so seeing George Brett off the table, would that have meant that you would not have picked Mike Schmidt because he was another shortstop?
Yeah, I mean that is one philosophy to take, and that seems to me that's what I would say generally to do. Apparently, this is the exception to that, right? For the
Well, let's look at the
it's happened a few
shortstop.
times, but
There were
one of their shortstops were
one,
drafted. Yeah,
two,
neither of them actually played shortstop
three,
though.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shortstops drafted in the first round. And
Yeah,
George Brett was the ninth shortstop. Schmidt was the 10th shortstop. So of the first 8, um,
-0.2, never played in the majors. 0, -3.7 WAR, never played in the majors. Never played in the majors. Craig Reynolds,
yeah,
13.1 WAR.
decent player. Yeah, he was an all-star.
Mike Miley, -0.9 WAR for his career. So I mean, those don't sound like very good numbers, right? One guy was okay. The rest of the guys were mediocre at best, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where uh
And then Brett and Schmidt, two future Hall of Famers, picked in the second round back to back.
welcome back. And you have other Ron Guidry was picked that year. Keith Hernandez was picked in the 42nd round. Also in that draft, the Royals in the 33rd round picked Steve Bartkowski. Do you know who Steve Bartkowski is? Have you heard
No,
of him? He never played baseball. He became an NFL football player. He was the Atlanta Falcons quarterback for
really.
about 10 years between 1975 and 85. He was actually the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft in 1975. So he became a NFL football player. Did
He,
not
he
play.
did not sign with the Royals, by the way.
He is one of, I think, several prominent NFL quarterbacks to have been drafted by the Royals. I believe they also drafted Dan Marino and
Yeah, I think so.
was it Jim Kelly or was it Elway they drafted?
That's
It was Elway. It was Elway and Dan Marino they drafted
yeah. Yeah, how
in
when were they drafted? Was it
1979. So
so
it was
a couple
before
years
they went to
before
college.
their college debuts even, right? Yeah, a year before their college debut. That's right.
Elway was also a
So they drafted both of them that year. It's in
Dan Marino was 4th round. John Elway was 18th round.
Dan Marino, fourth round, did not sign. Yes, obviously.
John Elway, 18th round. And then Elway was also a 2nd round pick for the Yankees in 1981. And he did play minor league baseball with the Yankees,
One season.
but the Royals pitched him first. The Royals also drafted Archie Manning, father of Peyton and Eli, grandfather of Arch Manning, the number 1 recruit. Isn't I think going
Yes.
to Texas, I believe. Um, Yeah, he drafted Steve Bartkowski. Also, famously, probably the most famous football player that was drafted by the Royals was Bo Jackson, Heisman Trophy winner, who ended up actually playing in the NFL. So the Royals have had some interesting draft picks that became football players. Apparently, Dan Marino's baseball ceiling was higher than Elway's. I'm reading according to this article on Yahoo right now. Injuries at Pitt and later in the NFL robbed Marino of his running ability. He became a statuesque pocket passer. But there were people that said, I think Marino's ceiling was higher than Elway, said one of these scouts. Art Stewart, I believe, legendary Royal scout Art Stewart, who has
Yeah.
died. They always called him a legendary scout, even though the Royals didn't have that much success. Really compared, I guess they did in the '70s quite a bit, but like as like
Yeah.
you know, I don't know what Art
Well,
Stewart.
would you agree with their assessment though that Marino is better than Elway?
In baseball,
No, just in general.
in general, I'd probably rather have Elway simply because well, Elway's teams went to the Super Bowl a bunch of times. Marino's only one time, and they
Yes.
lost. Even though Elway's teams lost, they went at least they went three times, kind of when Elway was running the show. Um,
So
I
you're
think
saying you're a title chaser then? Like you only care about the championships?
I think when it gets to be five Super Bowls to one Super Bowl, there's a difference there. I think if it's like if Elway if Marino had made two and Elway had made even four or something like that, I think a big disparity, I think for a quarterback especially, I think there's a difference. Like
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes has already been to the Super Bowl three times, which is three times as many Super Bowls as you know Aaron Rodgers has been to. Especially, you can kind of, in some ways, say, well, sometimes the quarterback is the only good player on a really bad team, maybe.
Well, Rodgers has been to the Super Bowl before, right?
Or he's been one time. He's only been
Oh,
one
he's
time.
been to one, yeah. Or he
He's
won.
only been one time.
He's
One.
been to one and won one, or
Yeah, he's 1-0. He
okay,
won in 2010, I believe.
yeah,
So it's I don't quarterbacks. I think the ring factor makes sense somewhat because there's that. I think there is playing good games against the toughest competition in tight spots. And it's not like I think in some ways I think the number of Super Bowls that Brady has gone to, it's I think what is it, 11? Is he or he's or just 10? He's seven, maybe 7-3. I think the 10. I think the number of Super Bowls he's reached 10 is more impressive than just the seven
yeah.
win because if you make it to the Super Bowl, you win or lose. I think that's impressive.
So
So
when we've talked about this, I think before, but just to see if it's consistent, then LeBron James and NBA championships versus Jordan's went to six, won all six, versus LeBron's gone to
10, I believe, and won four.
Four. Yes, four.
4 and 6. I think LeBron's is more impressive because he's been to more. Because like if you don't go like the six, like it's like if you win six, you go to six and win six. Well, what happened to all those other years that Jordan played? That means he lost before. So I don't think you should be rewarded for losing earlier in the playoffs than not. So I think the kind of like in college, like in sort of college basketball coaching, a lot of the measurements are Final Fours
Yeah,
made is a big thing,
rather
and
than
it's not.
championships necessarily.
Yeah, and so like making it far, I think, is a accomplishment.
Consistently deep into the playoffs is
Yeah.
preferable.
So like Andy Reid's, you know, is it 10 now conference championship games that he has coached in? That's impressive. And then you
But it's
win
more impressive now that he has
Super
two
Bowl win.
titles, right?
Yeah, you would say, well, by on average, if you win, if you go to 10 conference championships, you should make it to five Super Bowls. And then you should
Yeah,
win 2 to 3 Super Bowls if it's like a 50-50 kind of thing. So I
yeah.
think, yeah, I think that's impressive. And I think if you like make, like you had said, if you make it and win Super Bowls, like if you make it to the championship game a lot and can't make it past that, that shows kind of a limitation, but still impressive. But
Yeah.
like you look at Aaron Rodgers' career, he has been in several NFC championship games and only won one. And just by the odds, you would think that you would win more, especially since a lot of those games have been at home for the Packers as one of the top seeds. And so I would, I yeah. So I guess that's why going back to Elway versus Marino. Is that what we were talking about? I
Yeah.
think Marino was in some ways a better passer, but he was he ended up being very very one dimensional, and Elway could move the ball. It was a mobile quarterback and could do more things. So I guess I would take Elway over Marino, but
Hmm.
how about you?
Just not just because the Broncos they suck. To hell with
Well,
anything Broncos related.
the Chiefs had the chance to draft Dan Marino, but they didn't. And the Steelers had a chance. And he played for Pitt, and if he had got and he was actually thought of as like going into the season was the number one overall draft probably prospect. But his senior year at Pitt was not as good as his junior year, and there were rumors that like he was a partier and like did cocaine and stuff like that, and that's why he ended up dropping. And so the Chiefs ended up taking kind of 1 year wonder Todd Blackledge from Penn State over solid uh, 4 year starter or whatever it was, Dan Marino. I don't know if Blackwood was just a 1 year wonder. He wasn't. Um, he was not. He became a good analyst and broadcaster, but he was not a very good quarterback. He couldn't beat out Bill Kinney as a quarterback. So yeah, he was drafted ahead of. So Blackledge was number 7 overall. He was the second quarterback taken behind John Elway. So the Chiefs didn't have a chance to get Elway, but Jim Kelly was drafted that draft later. Tony Eason, who was he made it to a Super Bowl as a kind of a backup quarterback,
Yeah.
or kind of platoon quarterback with Steve Grogan, former K-State star. Ken O'Brien had some decent years as quarterback. He was also picked a little bit later. So yeah, Blackledge was probably the least successful of those first round quarterbacks.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but in the NFL draft, you expect your players to contribute more quickly than MLB draft, and that's something also you expect from the NBA draft, which happened last week. But the number one overall pick, the NBA draft, uh, was
Victor Wembanyama.
Victor Wembanyama. Let's see, we from
Not surprisingly, was
not
basically
surprisingly,
said to be the number one pick probably before the last NBA season even started. Uh, played well during that season and then was selected number one by San Antonio. Straight to the
yeah.
championship game. Is that your expectation now from the number one pick?
You would think so. It seems like he's been the most hyped pick probably since LeBron almost.
But,
We had talked about
LeBron. It took LeBron several years to get even get to the playoffs, right?
yeah,
Let
that's true. But
alone win a championship, and it wasn't with the team that drafted him. Then,
he made it to a finals with Cleveland
yes,
before he left, and he had basically
surprisingly, because I don't think that team was
very
expecting to
good.
get finals by any means.
No, he carried that. It's one of those things that also with LeBron, he carried some of those Cleveland teams to like he was kind of maligned for joining Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and stuff like that in Miami, but
Not just
he
because of the way he joined them, though.
yeah taking his talents to South Beach
Right. The announcement and
but his Cleveland
the way that was
teams
handled.
he won with Cleveland and he had
The
Kevin Love and
decision.
that
The
was
decision. That's what it was called.
just the decision. Yeah,
Yes.
he didn't have a lot of supporting cast, and he didn't really have a great coach. Whereas you think that at least Wembanyama has one of the greatest coaches uh, in NBA history. We could easily say, I think, Greg Popovich. as his coach. So that's maybe a little bit, you think, Mahomesy, Andy Reid, like you would say.
I think with their second pick, they took another like French player too. So maybe like ease Wembanyama's transition into the NBA too, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, it was Leonard Miller from Canada.
Oh,
So he's from, well, he may speak a little French just being from Ontario, but
hmm.
he didn't play in, well, a lot of these players now are not playing in college. They're going directly to the
Was he a D League player?
G League, yeah, or
G
G
League
League as
player,
they call
right?
it now. I'm not sure why they call it a G League. Did you know?
It's because it's sponsored by Gatorade, so
Oh,
it's the G League now.
so
Yes,
it was the D League, the development league. Then it became the G
developmental league. Yeah.
in 2017. Okay, okay, that makes sense. I didn't remember why it was called the G League. So a lot of the players were G League um, draft picks. Um, so number three, Scoot Henderson was a G League guy. Um, some of these players were what were called the overtime elite league of this league.
Yes. You're not going to mention the Thompson twins, or
Yeah, it's a sports media company geared towards Gen Z sports fans,
yeah,
and it's operated by Overtime company, and it's a professional basketball league for American international basketball players between the ages of 16 to 20. Players receive a minimum salary of $100,000 annually, signing bonus shares. So that's interesting. Okay, so yeah, the Thompson twins, Amen and uh Asar Thompson.
sounds right.
Uh, that's interesting that maybe it's Amon.
Amen, I think.
Uh,
Yeah.
or Amon. Amon and Asar Thompson were number 4 and 5. They were both on the City Reapers overtime. That's not a very good name.
But they should be referred to as the Thompson twins, though, right? I mean,
Thompson twins. Hold me now. This should be there.
yes.
Uh, yeah. Why are they called the City Reapers? That doesn't. I guess Grim Reapers, but like I wouldn't. Reaper is a little too close to other uh, words that are not as positive.
Less
Um,
desirable.
yeah. Oh, there was another French player, Bilal Koulibaly, who was traded to Washington um, from the Metropolitans '92 team. That also was Wembanyama's.
Hmm. Oh, maybe that's what it. Maybe I just thought another player of his got drafted from his team.
The Metropolitans '92 is based in Levallois, Perret, which is Paris suburb. So they played for the Parisian suburb team,
Hmm.
and the Metropolitans '92. Two of their players were taken in the top seven. So yeah, yeah. But the NBA, it looks like you think okay, NBA players they become really good really quickly, and having the first round pick, of course, is going to be the best. But we discovered something looking up just the last 20 plus years of draft picks. Having the number one draft pick being the best player that year is pretty rare. In 2003, LeBron has been the best player by win shares and other statistics, probably pretty easily. 2004, Dwight Howard was the best player taken, but then it wasn't until 2015 where we have Karl Anthony Towns as the top player. So three times in the 21st century, we looked at the drafts from 2000 to 2020. The last couple, you can't really tell who's going to be the best player. There's only been a few.
It's not totally fair to make that
Yeah,
judgment now, at least anyway. But as of right now, these numbers are accurate, right?
yeah, you could
So by,
say
by win shares, right? Three of the 23 drafts of this century, the
the
number
number
one
one
player
pick
in the
was best.
draft has been the highest by win shares, is all.
Yeah, it's a
So
stat
like
on
so
basketball
the
reference.
so the concept for but in the NBA then for tanking for the number one pick doesn't guarantee the best player out of the draft by any means.
No, you could say generally these number one picks have been at least solid players if not the best. So that's probably different from Major League Baseball and some other um, drafts, but it's not the uh, slam dunk, uh, pun intended, that maybe we
Sport
think it
appropriate,
is.
pun
Yeah.
intended. Yes.
Yes, and well, Wembanyama, like we said, he's the LeBron. It's probably the most. So LeBron was picked number one. That was an easy pick. But sometimes these players get hurt. Who knows? Famously, a few years after LeBron was taken, Greg Oden was seen as the number one overall pick, and that was the year Kevin Durant was drafted number two, and Durant turned out to be much better than Oden, mainly because he was healthy, and Oden was kind of a prematurely old man. It seemed like when he was drafted.
He didn't just look like an old man.
Yeah,
He also apparently had like the bone structure of an old man, I
yeah,
guess.
he had microfractures in his knees that required multiple surgeries, and he never really did a lot in the NFL. I mean, in the NBA, he is still only 35 years old, and you would say a 35-year-old player can still be a solid NBA player. Um, but yeah, he ended up only playing. Well, he played about uh, 7 or 8 years in the NBA.
But
He
probably
played
parts of 7 or 8 years, though, really.
he played for the Trailblazers, and then
Is that who drafted him?
Trailblazers drafted him.
Yeah.
Supersonics at that point drafted under. Oh yeah, he didn't even play 70s. He played parts of 3 seasons in the NBA.
Hmm.
He played in 08, 09, 09, 10, and then 13, 14.
What was the most number of games he played in one season?
51.
That's that's like 3/4 of the season. Then that's pretty
Yeah, he started 39 of those games.
good.
That was his rookie. Well, he sat out his rookie year. This was his second year. He averaged 8.9 points per game, 7 rebounds. And then the next year he did a little better, but only played 21 games. He was 10 points, 8.5 rebounds, and then he got hurt. So he was um, more microfracture surgeries in his knees. So like
Hmm.
he just had very bad injury, um, kind of underlying injuries that probably just being so tall and just genetic kind of issues maybe. But yeah, unfortunately he missed multiple seasons. He had other knee injuries as well, and he ended up playing a little bit in China at the end of his career. So
Any idea what he's doing now?
Thad Matta was the basketball coach at Ohio State. He is now also the basketball coach, and Greg Oden joined Thad Matta's staff as quote director of basketball operations.
Oh, well, that's cool anyway. So he's still involved in
Yes,
basketball. He's just not playing himself anyway, right?
yeah. He
So were you more surprised by, I mean, anything in the draft than say one of the top players in college from the last several seasons going completely undrafted in Drew Timme from Gonzaga?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you think, well, he's probably gonna at least get drafted in the second round, but I'm a little surprised. I guess he is not seen as terribly athletic, but he was a very solid player on one of the best teams. He in 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 college basketball the last 4 seasons, and I'm surprised that he didn't get drafted, but it's one of those things like sometimes you think in the NFL, if you'd rather be an undrafted free agent than a seventh round pick.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd rather be an undrafted free agent than a second round pick because you can pick who you want to go to. It to me, as Simon Bucks, maybe he could see potentially backing up Giannis in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
Gonzaga players haven't had a lot of um, NBA success, have they?
What's that? What?
Have they had a lot of NBA
The
success?
Gonzaga, just
Yeah,
Gonzaga players in general.
yeah.
I think a few have done all right. I think when we just kind of passed through that the last several drafts, from from the last 20 couple years,
Oh
20,
yeah, Sabonis, Domantas
there were
Sabonis is
there
probably
were
the
a
most
couple
successful.
that popped up at least anyway that
Ronnie Turioff had some good seasons.
yeah.
Probably one of the most famous, probably the most famous player from Gonzaga as a player was Adam Morrison. You remember him with the mustache?
Right.
He
He had
was
he had a decent NBA career.
he was co-player of the year with JJ Redick that year. He played 5 years in the NBA. He won 2 championships with the Lakers, but
That's where you could say he
I
had a
don't think he
career.
really played very much with the Lakers.
No.
He averaged about 2 points a game.
Yeah.
Lakers over 2 years. So yeah, he started out with the I believe I don't know if they were the Hornets then or the Bobcats then.
Hmm.
Um,
But Charlotte.
Charlotte, I think they were the Bobcats, but um, it's yeah. So I guess the poster child for Gonzaga, kind of white guys from Gonzaga,
Yeah.
not being
So do you think that
successful.
maybe that actually dragged Timmy out of the draft because of that? So people remember that? Maybe.
That's
I don't know.
I think that's possible.
No.
Yeah. You have I don't there have been some. Oh, I guess the most famous Gonzaga basketball player by far is John Stockton. I forgot he went to Gonzaga, but that
Well,
was
going back a little further. Yeah.
before the NCAA tournament kind of regular Mark Few era Gonzaga. So,
Right.
Jalen Suggs, Jeremy Pargo, a few kind of um, Kelly Olynyk, I guess, is still in the NBA. He's had a decent uh, uh, career. He played for Gonzaga as well. So he's, but anyway, they haven't had a lot of success, and maybe that's why. But yeah, I was surprised that Timmy didn't get picked. But
Anything else surprising from the draft or
not
no?
that I don't. Yeah. Do you have any other further insights? Should we move to the NFL then? Probably the most notable story of the past week was just happened today was the tragic death of Ryan Mallett, former um, New England Patriots quarterback, Houston Texans quarterback, also famously probably the best known for his Arkansas Razorbacks college career. He was really on one of the last excellent Arkansas teams that was he drowned in off the coast of Florida, which is having a rash of riptides and very rough and not so good surf conditions that everybody should probably stay away from the shore, at least away from the water that's more than maybe ankle deep. But I remember him as a Razorback player during the short-lived but very successful. I guess we could say it was like was the Bobby Petrino era. He was really a meteor, Bobby Petrino for the Razorbacks. He, was a shooting star. He was so good for such a short time, and he really flamed out at the end with his motorcycle accident that with his mistress slash assistant that he had hired uh, on back of the motorcycle or something. Do you remember Bobby Petrino's press conference that he gave soon after his motorcycle accident?
That is, anytime the name Bobby Petrino comes up, that is what is pictured in my head as him in the neck brace, bruised face, talking to the media about what he had done and trying to be apologetic. It's one of the most ridiculous media moments maybe ever. Really. That is like what I picture every time I hear his name. That is what I picture should never have happened. I don't know why he wanted to go on TV at that time, or what
Yeah,
press person told him he should be on television, but that was crazy.
yeah.
And
Arkansas that year. That was the year after Mallett had uh gone to the NFL.
so did that overlap with your tenure at Arkansas? Were you there
No, it
during
was about 10 years
Petrino? That was
after
after, right? That was much
I was there.
you were long gone, right? Is that
Yeah, that was the top. Yeah, so this was they'd gotten the top. They finished the top five in the country that year. Tyler Wilson was the quarterback that year after, and Tyler Wilson was drafted by the Raiders in the fourth round. He never uh, really did much in the NFL. He played a little bit, but he was the 2011 and 2012 starting quarterbacks, and both those um, uh, teams were pretty good. But yeah, it was in
you
April
would have been done with
2012.
graduate school by then, I
Yeah, I
guess.
was done with. Yeah, I actually had been. I was married at that point, um, and living in Kansas City,
Oh, okay.
and
Dude,
from I lived in
multiple cities passed when you're
29, 20, yeah,
yeah.
2009 to, well, I guess 2012. I got my PhD in 2012. I didn't finish my dissertation till then, so I was still technically a grad student and working on my dissertation. But I was living in Kansas City and teaching. But yeah, so I remember going down to Fayetteville and staying in a hotel uh, Bowl that the Ryan Mallett played in. The Arkansas lost to Ohio State that game.
Hmm.
But couple years after, that's when the Petrino incident happened. There's a highway crash um, with Bobby Petrino riding his motorcycle, and soon after uh, it was supposedly Bobby Petrino was alone on the motorcycle when he crashed. That was what started, and then it became clear that he wasn't alone, and he was with this young staffer, less than half his age, uh, and she was a former volleyball player who had been given this position as a football kind of assistant to hire her, and he had circumvented affirmative action guidelines and all sorts of things in hiring her. And he was,
Assistant to the regional manager, would you say?
yeah, essentially, yeah, she was a football, some sort of football liaison type of person.
Right.
And um, so he ended up getting fired. The special teams coach, John L. Smith, became the coach. He only lasted a year. Then Bobby Bielema became the coach. Didn't do so well. And then we've had a Chad Smith, and then I think it was Chad Smith, Chad somebody, and then currently Sam Pittman. But Bobby Petrino famously, do you remember what happened when he went to Arkansas to coach? Do you remember the circumstances of that transition? That was another infamous
Oh,
example in the Bobby Petrino story.
was he like bailed on some other school, didn't he? Was that or no, an NFL team?
He was the Atlanta Falcons. He quit like 3 games left with 3 games left in the
Yeah,
season.
in during the season, he's like, I'm out, and just like leaves, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about that. See, everything has been just replaced with the image of the neck brace. And then that is Bobby Petrino. It's just that moment.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm just reading right now. Petrino's coached 13 games with Falcons. It's tied for the third shortest non-interim coaching tenure in NFL history, after two famous college coaches, both national championship winners.
Yeah.
So who we know one of them, I think. Who had the short one of the shortest uh, coaching tenures in the NFL history very recently.
Oh, yeah, recently. Yes. But yeah, what was Saban though? Was he
Saban
relatively
lasted about 2 seasons for
was 2
Miami.
years? Okay.
This was the one
Yeah.
where this was same state, but it was a more infamous departure.
Right. This was what is his name? It was the Florida Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of it. I'm drawing a blank.
Urban Meyer,
Urban
yeah,
Meyer. Yes.
Urban Meyer. And the other one was actually a coach at the University of Arkansas back in the 1970s.
Hmm.
Um, and he actually coached. He also would leave the NFL to coach Arkansas uh, in 1977. He was the Jets coach at that point. This was Lou Holtz, famous,
Oh,
probably most famous as Notre Dame's coach, and
yeah.
also famous, at least in my mind, as looking just like Irene Ryan, aka Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies. Uh,
You've
do
never
you
seen them in the same place at the same
I
time.
have never seen Irene. Irene Ryan, I think, died on stage or very close to being on stage in a performance of Pippin, the Broadway musical set during the time of Charlemagne, back in the late '70s, early '80s. Um, but Lou Holtz, I believe, is still alive. Um,
Yeah, I think he's still an
isn't he
analyst.
a very? Isn't he? I mean, he's become like a super Trumpy type of person. Oh, early '70s. So 1973 was when Irene Ryan died. Um, soon after, and it was soon after that Lou Holtz's career took off. So maybe they were the same person. But yeah, so in 1972, Ryan starred in the Bob Fosse directed musical Pippin, which she sang, but then she died. Uh, she actually, yes, she was. Irene Ryan was a lifetime heavy smoker,
Yeah.
smoked like a chimney.
He only had a
Uh,
stroke during
Stroke during Pippin. That's it. She didn't die during Pippin. She had a stroke
2 months
during.
later, or a month and a half
Yeah,
later, that she did
yeah.
die, though.
But yeah, my story is essentially correct.
That's awfully close
Yeah,
for something that
dying.
happened before you were born.
Yeah.
You know that. That's pretty
Well,
good.
that's also my ex. No, I knew that because of my ex wife, who I traveled down to Arkansas to see the Sugar Bowl. She was a very, and still is a Elizabeth is still a very um, uh, much a fan devotee of the theater and Broadway and things like that. So she knows all those facts. So that's where I learned. Learned that. I listened to the cast recording of Pippin from the '70s, and Irene Ryan does sing a song. That's the most famous star of Pippin of the '70s was Ben Vereen. I don't know if you remember Ben Vereen. He was a
Sure.
you
But
remember
you're telling me that Pippin is not a musical about bulls
Scottie
forward
Pippen? No,
heaven?
it's about
Oh.
one of Charlemagne's sons, Nick Pepin. Um,
Hmm.
but Ben Vereen, probably most famous. He's a
Hmm.
dancer, and um, he was actually I remember him on TV as Webster's real father, who
Hmm.
tried to take Webster back from Mam and George Papadopoulos. Uh,
Yes.
Alex Karras, NBA NFL player, famously known as Mongo as well in Blazing Saddles, was the
Propensity
father.
punching out horses.
Yes, Mongo only pawn in Game of Life or whatever it was. Like, wasn't that the right? Wasn't that?
Yes.
Uh, he was also yeah. So Ben Vereen was also in Roots. He was the uh, uh, he was also Geordie LaForge's father in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Good to
So
know.
also LeVar Burton, who was also in Roots. But anyway, that's Ben Vereen. We don't need to talk about Ben Vereen. But going back to Lou Holtz, Lou Holtz, I believe, became a very outspoken um, right wing Trump person.
Who also
In
may or
the,
may not be Irene Ryan.
he also may or may not be Irene Ryan. Yeah.
We don't know for
But
sure.
yeah, no, but then yeah, famously he coached at Arkansas, then went to Minnesota for a little while, then with Notre Dame, his most famous, and then he coached at South Carolina for a little while, I think before Steve Spurrier became the South Carolina coach. Also, someone who had a very short-lived NFL coaching career after a solid college coaching career. Like, we talked earlier about how college coaches do not you tend to do very well in the NFL,
Right.
and even those legendary kind of college coaches do not do well usually in the
Just as
NFL.
you mentioned, though, like, yeah, college coaching is maybe more about motivating and recruiting, then, right? Those are
Mhm.
the two. It's like it's a personality driven coaching job rather than like maybe more of a X's and O's type with the in the NFL, right?
Yes. Yes. I have just a few before we wrap up. We should probably wrap up soon. I have a few brief snippets of NFL stories that I want you to maybe comment on.
Sure.
Um, do you know Philadelphia Eagles practice squad player Devon Allen? Have you heard his
No,
name?
obviously, I know all about him.
Devon Allen, he finished um, in he ran the fourth fastest 110-meter high hurdles race in international track and field this year. So he is perhaps a an Olympic threat at some point in the 110-meter hurdles. Do you think if Allen were to play in the NFL on the Eagles regular squad, would he be the fastest player in the NFL, or is Tyreek Hill, do you think, probably still
Ooh,
faster?
I mean,
Or you could also add perhaps Kansas City Chiefs practice or signee uh, John Ross, who ran the fastest uh, NFL combine 40-meter dash, 40-yard dash ever. He was 4.23 or something like that. I think
yeah.
Tyreek was 4.28 or 9, so even faster than Tyreek.
So if I'm saying if we're going to line all three of them up, who would run? Who would have the fastest 40?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't know. Raw. I'll say Ross. How about you?
40, yeah, I'd say if it was the fastest 20 or something like that, that
Yeah,
would be Tyreek Hill because I think
yeah.
he is the quickest and the fastest.
From zero to go seems to be.
Yeah. Uh, Devon Allen, maybe it's Devon Allen. I haven't heard his name pronounced. Um, he's a white guy, which is
That's surprising. Not what I expected when just even from by name. Or
Devon. I guess he's probably Devon. I would guess probably, right? If he were African American, I would say he's probably Devon. It's Devon. So I haven't seen a pronunciation anywhere. Um, Devon Allen. He's 27, but he was
oh, that's really old. That practice squad. I just assumed he was a rookie. 27. Yeah.
yeah, he was yeah, but he played briefly at the University of Oregon, and then he was on the track. Oregon's one of the big track schools.
He was 28.
Yeah. Okay. Another big track schools. Arkansas is one of the famous track and field programs uh, of the college world as well. But so Allen is perhaps faster than Tyreek. I don't know. I would say, yeah. Allen says he could run a 4.1. I read an article uh, somewhere, but yeah, he's on the practice squad. According to one thing, he ran a 4.35 40 at pro day. So maybe again, it's 40-yard dash time is about a start and being really, I guess, getting up to top speed very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think sprinters usually they don't necessarily get up to top, they want to be able to maintain that top speed as long as they can.
Yeah.
And so maybe getting up to it wouldn't be as fast. So Tyreek, I would say, yeah, the 20. If the shorter the distance, the better he'll. Although
Yeah.
he gets once he gets up to top speed, he's really fast too.
Yeah.
Um, maybe John Ross might win the 40, but I think Hill is a faster, like on the football
If you
field,
have an
probably.
obstacle that somebody has to jump over, then
Yeah, if they were wearing football uniforms, I would say Tyreek Hill would be the fastest.
yeah.
And if they're wearing track clothes, I don't know. Speaking of fast or wide receivers, Devontae Adams uh, recently had his assault charge dropped. You might remember Adams um, after the Chiefs beat the Raiders in huge comeback fashion in Kansas City. Adams, while he was walking toward still on the field, pushed over some media guy, and apparently charges were pending uh, in that. I guess this is I guess these are assault charges, criminal assault. So there's two different types of assault. You can have a
Mhm.
civil assault, tort challenge, where you can be taken to court and sued for your, and that would and what and it wouldn't be what we would call assault, it would be battery. I think oftentimes we misconstrue assault versus battery.
Right.
Battery is the actual touching and pushing. Assault generally is in criminal law attempted battery, or it's making somebody feel like a, there is going to be a battery, or there's some sort of harmful or offensive touching that's going to happen. Although in New York State, and this is probably where the confusion comes, I remember they used to, at least they used to have this. I don't know if they still do. They have what instead of assault and battery together, they have the battery is assault, and the assault part is simply called attempted assault. And so if you're
Really?
successful with attempted assault, you become guilty of assault. But in other states, I think assault and battery usually. So you can be battered without being assaulted if you aren't aware of what's going to happen. You can also be assaulted without being battered. But so in the tort world, and even I would say in the criminal world, in most states, at least the majority of states, what Adams did was a pure battery. It wasn't an assault, because I don't think, because it happened so quickly. I don't think anybody was. I don't think the media
Know that it
member
was about to be
even
for sure.
had time to react to what it was. So that was my beef with calling it assault. But it says something in
Yeah.
Missouri. I don't know the Missouri laws. I'm taking the bar exam in July, and the bar exam covers multi-state kind of typical laws.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Missouri is specifically different or not.
So was
But
the charge was settled, or was it just
so
dropped?
this the prosecutor dismissed the misdemeanor charge. It says assault, but I don't know if that's going to be true.
Yeah.
Um, and the civil case remains pending, so there's no criminal case. So this is could still be an assault. I would imagine that the guy who was pushed, his name is Ryan Zebley, will probably just charge. Will probably try to get assault and battery. Simply, you just want to throw everything out there and hope and
Sure.
see what sticks. Um, Judging from when I watched it, I didn't see an assault. I just saw that, and um, I didn't see a reaction before what happened. But sometimes they just got to get it.
So
That's my
will the dismissal of the criminal charge affect the civil case at all, or is that does it
it could
necessarily
it
mean
could be
anything?
used, but it doesn't it doesn't release him from liability. That it would be something that, like, it's sort of like the O.J. Simpson trial. He was
Right.
acquitted of murder, but was still found guilty of um, violating civil rights, or some sort of civil crime, tort crime um,
Yeah.
against Nicole Brown Simpson. So it would be the same thing.
But what I
Um,
mean, you don't need the criminal charge
no, and it's not,
to go after
and
the civil
yeah,
suit.
and
Yeah.
it's not considered to be double jeopardy or anything like that if you are charged in civil criminal court than civil court. Um,
Yeah.
it's only criminal twice in a criminal court, or perhaps after the civil court has been adjudicated. But yeah, so that was Devontae Adams. I don't, you remember that scene? I don't know if you had any other
Hmm.
comment.
Come on.
Oh, so Zebley is suing Adams, the Raiders, and the Chiefs, among others, over the incident. So
Oh.
again, you want to just throw it to everybody, uh, and the idea would be that the Chiefs did not provide enough security. Adams was working for the Raiders, and therefore the Raiders are vicariously liable for Adams's actions. Although usually, you aren't going to be able to sue um, the organization they work for, because this is what we would call an intentional tort, and you're not liable for usually for intentional torts caused by your employees, unless they're like a security guard or a bouncer or something like that, somebody whose job it is to like push people out of the way or hustle people off. So that's part of their job. So football players push each other on the field, but it's not their job to push other people around. So I would say I don't think the Raiders. I don't think the charge against the Raiders should stick, but maybe you could say against Adams, possibly the Chiefs, if you think that there was not enough I don't know, security or something,
Yeah. I don't know.
or maybe against the network he was working for, or the newspaper, or whatever he was working for. But
Right. Yeah, I
I
don't know.
think
That's
I
interesting.
would say the only real possible person you could sue is Adams himself.
You would think that
And
makes
I
it.
would say it's outside his duties as a football player that he did the thing. So the assault. And my that was really what I wanted to talk about. There was a um, incident involving. Unfortunately, we did not have two NFL players die yet earlier today. Leonard Fournette's car caught on fire. Did you hear about this? His
I saw a headline. I didn't look into it though.
Yeah, it's pretty bad if you look on the TMZ.
Really?
He had an SUV, also in Florida. He was driving on I-275 in Tampa, and his fire started to a mechanical issue, and he drove a Dodge Durango that was burnt to a crisp, basically. It
Wow.
melted. The fire melted through, like it melted the windshield.
Wow.
Wow.
So
And
he noticed it and realized something was wrong, pulled over, got out of the car, and the car just burned.
yes, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I just saw that he said I saw the headlines that like he escaped injury.
Yeah, no, the car just caught on fire,
Wow.
and yeah, he's worth about 100,000, not even $100,000. Fournette is not, he hasn't signed with an NFL. It seems like a lot of the like very solid running backs, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, veteran running backs are not signing with anyone because NFL teams either want very cheap veterans or young players, and there's no kind
Yeah.
of middle ground. Um,
Right.
Saquon Barkley's having a hard time, signing his contract. So like it's the maybe the dying days of running back. We've seen the fullback kind of go away. Maybe the high priced running back is going to go. I've heard arguments that the NFL maybe should institute different rookie salary scales for running backs because they become so good early and then they're run to death and
Right.
then cast aside when they want a contract. I don't. Do you think that would be a sort of equitable kind of thing to do,
It
or would
seems like
that
they're
just
gonna
lead
have
to
to.
not drafting running backs in the draft?
Yeah. It seems like they're gonna have to do something to sort of like even out the responsibility to pay difference for that position at least anyway, right? So um yeah, it's really crazy how they that particular player set gets sort of bears a lot of the burden of the team's success or at least responsibility for the percentage of plays that are run by a running back anyway, right? And then they don't have the chance to like have long careers anyway. That's
Yeah, you don't like like Adrian Peterson. I guess Derrick Henry maybe is the one of the last ones, but the
yeah.
running back career is so short. Todd Gurley was, injury cut his career short. Ezekiel Elliott was one of the top players a couple years ago. It seems like he's not. Alvin Cook was still on the top of his game, and he's been pushed aside. I guess Christian McCaffrey is maybe some of those more dual threat kind of guys are being kept more,
Mhm.
but
But they have like
you have,
different. They have a different sort of value set than
yeah,
pure running back anyway. Yeah.
yeah, you have to wonder what because this is Edward Alaire, probably his last year with the Chiefs. Is he going to be able to sign anywhere else? Leonard Fournette has been more successful than Clyde has, but he still hasn't found a job. Um,
He's
and
not. Yeah, he's not like a super dynamic runner though. He's pretty much head down, straight ahead type of player, right?
Well, he was the best. He had a couple of really big seasons after leaving the Jaguars with Tampa, and he became by the end of the Tampa he was the essentially the Super Bowl winning uh, running back in the Super Bowl season and had some decent years after. But yeah, he hasn't had he's only averaged 4 yards a carry through his career. He
Yeah.
has become a decent receiving back though. He had 668 yards rushing last year, 523 yards receiving. So that's quite a few for a running
Yeah.
back. Yeah, and so 73 receptions this past year, 69. He's had over 70. He's had about 70-ish receptions, 3 out of the last 4 years. And the other year he won the Super Bowl when he kind of transitioned into the role. So like he's been a productive running back, even if he's not been necessarily the top tier. And so like it makes you also kind of wonder, well, what's going to happen to Isaiah Pacheco in a couple of years? We think of him as the kind of new guy on the block, but is he, going to last?
He made it more of a receiver almost than a pure running back anyway.
And he runs with that such bruising style. You think, is his career going to be that long? But
Yeah.
Jerick McKinnon has managed to have a pretty long career, even though he had injuries uh, in the middle of his career that kept him from really being productive with San Francisco and things like that. So it's we'll keep an eye on things like that when we talk about the upcoming NFL season. But that's all I have really for NFL tidbit news. The Chiefs haven't really done a whole lot to keep things.
What they sold out their Germany game very quickly.
Oh yeah, they sold that out in 15 minutes. More than 1 million people tried to buy tickets.
Yeah. But I mean, these
Yeah.
are really Chiefs stories, or stories that involve, or what about the if I said a Chiefs player won a chess tournament, which player would you guess it would be?
Historically, you would say Priest Holmes. Priest Holmes was known for his chess prowess. I think Joe Posnanski wrote many columns about Priest Holmes playing chess with Joe
Really?
Posnanski because Joe Posnanski's dad was a chess guy because he was old and Eastern European. But I don't. I would guess if I had to, it would be maybe an offensive lineman. You think of those guys just being pretty, maybe Nick Allegretti or somebody like that.
Not an offensive lineman.
No,
It's actually on the defensive side.
defensive side.
Maybe just say like what position set do you think this player came from? Of if I tell you he's a defensive player.
Yeah, I would say possibly maybe Justin Reed. He's seen as a kind of he went to Stanford, smart guy, extra point kicker.
No,
Um,
I disagree.
I wouldn't say it's a defensive line unless Karl Aftis maybe played chess in Greece. Tamba Hali, I would have guessed, was probably a pretty good chess player. Uh, but it must be I would is it maybe one of the linebacker? Is it a linebacker?
And a newcomer.
A newcomer. Okay, I think okay. So coming from the Chargers, Drew Tranquil. That's my guess.
That's it. Chess
Yeah.
champion Drew Tranquil.
We talked about Drew's name, Drue, earlier. Uh, who did he beat in this tournament?
Oh, and that I don't know. And I think the article that was on Arrowhead Pride like today or yesterday. Yesterday, I guess. Well, now yesterday.
Oh, he played. It was
Blitz Champs 2 with
so it was
former
current and former
players.
players. Okay, so he beat Larry Fitzgerald, Eric Armstead, Kyler Murray was part of it. I guess it was sort of video gaming, so of course Kyler Murray is going to be part of that. Um, Interesting. He defeated New York Jets offensive guard Wes Schweitzer, Jets linebacker Chaz Surratt, and then Chidobe Awuzie was also in the final match. So last year's champion was Awuzie, Cincinnati quarterback.
The Chiefs asserting their dominance over the
The
Bengals once again, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. Awuzie drafted by the Cowboys, and I'm trying to look up his background. Awuzie, um, son of Nigerian immigrants. So usually his parents are probably he lived in Northern California, so his parents were probably kind of well-to-do doctor lawyer types. So that may be a chess, and also from Northern California, maybe chess background. But it's interesting that congratulations to Drew Tranquil, uh, the NFL's finest chess player, at least among recently active and currently active.
Barely.
Yeah, he went to Notre Dame. So smart guy. It looks like. We used to play chess. You and I. You became you bested me on more occasions than I beat you. Especially you practicing more and becoming reading up on it and becoming a better player. Have you played chess at all
Ooh,
recently?
that's been a while now. Yeah.
I haven't done much either. So
Yeah.
maybe next time we see each other we can play
Yeah, we'll
chess.
have to see who's better now.
Yeah.
We did
I
once.
don't pay attention long enough now. It's hard. Yeah, I lose focus and I make a dumb move or I don't see a good move. But um,
So nothing's changed, you saying?
well, speaking of good moves, maybe we should move to close this week's episode of our show. We talked a lot. Again, we always think we're going to have a short program. We end up gabbing longer about sort of tangential topics, which I think is what makes One Trick Power Hour the finest um, podcast slash YouTube channel on sporting related issues currently available anywhere that you can find. And um, we'll be back again next week with another exciting Fourth of July type of episode. But until then, I am Dr. Michael Waterman. He is Dr. Andrew Skeff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel. And best of luck to your Major League Baseball teams and whoever's competing this week. Whether maybe you're watching Devin Allen in the most in the next track meet in I don't know where the next big track meet is going to be in Gothenburg, Sweden, or Madrid, or someplace like that. That's where it seems like Europe is where the big meets are in the summer. But anyway, uh, we'll reconvene next week, and we'll talk more about the Major League Baseball draft, especially, and whatever else becomes a big issue in the world of sports or a small issue in the world of sports. And until then, we wish you good day.